Ready, everyone? So we'll start with the prayers, and then we'll do a bit of kirtan, and then we can hand over to Kunal Prabhu. So we'll start with these prayers. Please try and join as much as you can.
Okay, so just so people understand that whenever we do any of these things, the first thing we always do in our tradition is we always just initially pay respects to our guru, or generally all the gurus that are out and all the parampara, basically to say to them that, you know, we've come here to have this discussion, but at the same time, please give us the ability to actually say the right things at the right time, and please give the audience the ability to listen. And we also ask for your blessings as well, that actually that with this auspicious discussion of Bhagavad Gita that Kunal is going to take us on, but actually we're in the right frame of mind to start off with. So we have the prayers to the gurus, then from that we have the prayers to our chief deity, which is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then Radha and Krishna. So we go in that respect, and that's what we're going to be doing.
Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatari Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nanda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, everyone, and I'll now ask Kunal Prabhu to come and start the session. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Kunal Prabhu is going to start with these prayers. So I'll take these as well. So the both sides of the page.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Krishna. How are we doing? Everyone's good? Thank you all for coming to attend the second half of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita summaries at RCT. So, as Jyoti Ben said, we try and first invoke the blessings of the Guru, invoke the blessings of all the devotees of the Lord, and invoke the blessings of Radha Shyam. Invoke the Lord's blessings so that this discussion is blessed, that this discussion is free from ego, that this discussion is free from any material desires and can be as spiritualized as possible. We can't do this, they say we can't make it on our own when it comes to anything. So also with spiritual life, we can't make it on our own. We are always seeking the blessings of higher authorities and higher powers. So we'll just start with these prayers that you've just been handed out. The bits in bold is the Sanskrit which we'll be reciting, and it's good that underneath you can also see what we are actually, what is the translation, what is the meaning of the prayer. When we know the meaning of the prayer, we feel more connected to the sound vibration itself. Okay? So if you'd like to sing along, please feel free. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here we are, chapter 2. This is the juiciest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's so juicy. Why is it such a juicy chapter? Because everything's there. What is the title of this chapter? Anyone? What's the title of the second chapter? Have a look. Look for it. What does it say? Contents of the Gita summarized. The whole Bhagavad Gita has been summarized in chapter 2. It's all there. Everything's there. So last time, on the 17th of May, which was 3 weeks ago, we discussed the first half of chapter 2, where we spoke about Krishna and him responding to Arjuna's arguments for not fighting. And Krishna said to him, in summary, Krishna said to him, look Arjun, you just got to fight. You got to fight because we're not the body, we're the soul. You're saying you're going to lose. This is a lose-lose situation. But by the way, Arjun, this is not a lose-lose situation. It's a win-win situation. It's a win-win because if you defeat the other side, you enjoy the kingdom. If you die, you go to a higher destination. It's a win-win. Arjun, you're saying you don't want to fight on the grounds of compassion, but we're not the body, we're the soul. And Krishna spent from text 11 to text 30 explaining the science of the soul, which is what we discussed. Before my mom tells me off, my glasses are dirty, I'll clean them. So text 11 to 30 is the science of the soul. And now I can see you, Mom. So the science of the soul means that there's a spark within us. The spark within us continues lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Krishna says we are eternal. Eternal means we never took birth, and we, the soul, the spirit within us, will never ever die. So why this is the grounds of compassion Krishna also managed to defeat. In this way, Krishna said to Arjun, "Nevam papa avambas." There's no pap. There's no sin. You think there's sin in this? There is no sin. There is no sin. Why is there no sin? Because you are doing a higher duty. You're fighting on higher grounds. You're fighting on a higher principle. You're not fighting for yourself. You're fighting for dharma. You're fighting for a higher principle. So now Krishna, from text 39 onwards, which is what we're going to discuss today till the end of the Gita, Krishna is going to explain to Arjun the purity of one's existence, the purity in which one can exist day to day, living in their life, living in our life the way we live our day to day. Arjun is a warrior. Arjun is a warrior. He's on a battlefield. He's about to kill his relatives. Yet, he is able to experience the highest realms of bhakti. So, we may think, oh, it's not possible for me. I have children. I have a job. I have a mortgage. I have so many responsibilities. And then just as we think the responsibilities are over, we're getting on with it, the grandchildren come along. And it starts again. So the responsibilities seem like they are never ever going to end. When will I get the time? All this sounds good. This Bhagavad Gita stuff sounds good. I can come on a Wednesday every couple of weeks for a couple of hours. That sounds fine. But how to do this on a day-to-day basis? How is it actually possible? And so Krishna starts in text 40, he says to Arjun, Neha bikram nasosti pratyavayo navidyate swalpam api asya dharmasya triyate mato bayat. He says to Arjun that in this endeavor, nothing is ever lost. Nothing is ever lost. What does he mean? He means that any bhakti we do, anything spiritual we do, anything we do which is based on a connection with the Supreme can never ever be taken away from you. Now that is profound, because in this world what we're used to is if I give you my phone, I no longer have my phone. When you give something, you lose something. And in bhakti what Krishna is saying is, well, when you give something, you get something. When you give something, you get something. What do you get? You get a deposit in your eternal bank account. So we have a bank account where money is going in, money is going out, money is going in, money is going out. And at the end of this life, it doesn't really matter what went in and what went out, because we can't take a penny with us. We understand that, right? Not one penny comes with us. We can't. We come here alone, we leave this place alone. We come with nothing, we leave with nothing in this lifetime. So Krishna is saying, okay, we have so many achievements that we want to, so many ambitions that we want to achieve. So many different qualifications we want to get. So many different positions we want to uphold. But what Krishna is saying is, Nihabikam nasyosti pratyavayo navidyate. Anything in this eternal bank account will always stay with you. It will always stay with you. So if something's always going to stay with us, this is something we should invest in. It's a good investment. Something that will always stay with us. And Krishna gets into this more in chapter 6, which we'll cover in a few weeks or months' time. And what Krishna is saying is, because there is no loss and no diminution, if we invest here, whatever we do is worth it. It's worth it. It's worth giving it a go. And if at the end of this lifetime we don't quite make it to become fully pure, then our next life we will start with where we left off. And we can see this because all of us are here, which means for some reason we've been inclined somehow to get in touch with the Bhagavad Gita. And this could be the case even though our closest family, our closest friends, our closest colleagues at work may not have that same inclination. But something within us is yearning for it, is yearning for some spiritual understanding. So Krishna says to Arjuna next, okay, there's no loss, but if you want the big thing, he says, I think it's 41, Vyavasatmika buddhi ekaha kurunandana bahusaka hinantasya buddhayo vyavasainam. He's saying to Arjuna that one must be resolute in purpose. Vyavasatmika buddhi. One must be ekaha kurunandana. One must be one-pointed. So 2.41 I think we're at. Chapter 2, text 40. One must be one-pointed in their determination. One must be resolute. Bahusaka hinantasya. But one who is irresolute, his intelligence is many-branched. So what he's saying is spiritual life requires focus. It requires focus. Just like anything else in this world requires focus. If someone wants to become a cricketer, they really focus on playing cricket. If someone wants to become a footballer, they really focus on playing football. If someone wants to become a doctor, they really focus on becoming a doctor. If someone wants to become an accountant, they really focus on becoming an accountant at that time. It's not that the cricketer plays football for 2 hours, plays golf for 2 hours, and then plays cricket for 2 hours, and then wants to become a cricketer. No, the focus goes in. The focus is irresolute. It's determined. And because of that determination, those that try really, really hard, and not just try really hard, and have got some mercy, and have got the karma, and have got the blessings to go all the way and become professional, they take that step. But the point is that vyavasayatmika buddhi, one must be irresolute. One must be determined to completely put their attention and focus on the goal. So then it's like, oh, but how can 1 minute we're saying that we can carry on living our life, we've got our responsibilities, we've got our day to day, and at the same time what we're saying is that you can just that you must be focused. That you must be focused. We must be focused. What does focus mean? Does the budding cricketer still eat? Must be eating. Does the budding cricketer still drink? Does the budding cricketer still sleep? Does the budding cricketer sometimes still chill out? Does the budding cricketer still need a car? Does the budding cricketer still need a home? All these things are still there. But what's the focus? Cricket. The focus is what the determination is. So Krishna is saying to Arjuna, the purpose, the focus must be a higher spiritual connection. And this is something really interesting for us. We have all our responsibilities, but where is the real focus? If the focus is on everything, do we notice that when we have too many things to do, we just become overwhelmed and not get much done? Does that happen? Yeah, this is that there's just too much to do, and then not much happens at the end because there was just too much to do. So what does the cricketer do? The cricketer, what they do is they just plan their life around cricket. So they'll wake up at a certain time, they'll practice at a certain time, they'll eat at a certain time, they'll drink at a certain time, they'll relax at a certain time. But mainly the focus is on when to practice. When am I going to practice being the best bowler? When am I going to practice being the best batsman? So similarly for the spiritualist, the focus is how to deepen my connection with Krishna. How to deepen my higher connection. How to make that connection the priority. And everything else works with, integrated with that priority. That can be our job, our family, all our different responsibilities. So Krishna carries on and he says to Arjuna, okay, so what's going to stop you doing this? And in 44 he says, Bhogeshwarya prashaktanam daya parita chetasham vyavasayatmika buddhi samadana vidiyate. That bhoga and ashwarya, that too much opulence and too much enjoyment, bhog ashwarya, and daya parita chetasham, and becoming too bewildered by these things, becoming too bewildered by bhog and ashwarya. What will happen? This vyavasayatmika buddhi that we were talking about in text 41, samadau na vidiyate, it will not take place. So just like the cricketer is told, if you eat too much fatty foods, and if you drink too much alcohol, and if you don't keep fit, you're not going to make it. Krishna is saying, if you're too attached to enjoyment, and you're too attached to opulence, you won't make it. So he's making it very clear. These are the things that will get in your way. These are the things that will get in your way. It doesn't mean we can't have a little bit of opulence. It doesn't mean we can't have a little bit of enjoyment. That's okay. But if we become too bewildered by it, then samadau na vidiyate, it will not take place. It will not take place. So if we're always chasing enjoyment, if we're always chasing, how can I enjoy myself? How can I enjoy myself? How can I enjoy myself? The material world is kind of geared that way. Majaivi, ha bo majaivu. Isn't it? It's just like what we're doing in life. Ha majaivi, bo majaivu. Everything's just about majaivu, majaivu. And yes, we are. And what happens with majaivu, we're meant to be happy. But if that's all we're chasing, if all we're chasing is majaivi, then we realize that it's an unending chase. It's like a mirage, isn't it? It's like you're in the desert and you're chasing water, but the water's not really there. And with enjoyment in this material world, it's flickering. We get the enjoyment, and it's very temporary, and then we need it again. And it's very temporary, and we keep chasing it. So Krishna is saying, don't become too bewildered by enjoyment, and don't become too bewildered by opulence. It doesn't need to keep getting better and better to the sense that all our energy goes in making our life more and more opulent. So opulence sometimes comes. It sometimes comes to us. Maybe we're blessed. Maybe our karma is in such a way that opulence comes to us. And if opulence comes to us, we don't need to reject it. It's come to us. We can use it for a higher purpose. We can use the opulence for a higher purpose. But what Krishna is saying here is if we become bewildered by opulence, if we become so attached to chasing opulence, then all of our focus will go there instead of the spiritual goal. So he's giving these warnings. These are the things that can, the chase for enjoyment and the chase for opulence are the things that we need to be careful of. So he's saying that quite clearly. And then in text 46, he says, Yavan arta udapane sarvata samplutodike tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanitaha. He says that just as all the purposes of small wells come together in a big ocean, the purposes of the Vedas are accessible to one who knows the person behind it. And Krishna elaborates on this in 15:15, in chapter 15, text 15, later on, which will be, I guess, next year sometime, when we discuss that deeply. And Krishna says, Vedanta krid vedavid eva chaham, that he himself is the goal of all the Vedas. So the Vedic scriptures are so vast. When we hear about the Shastra, the Vedic scriptures, there's just so much to it. And, you can do this puja to get a nice house, you can do another puja to get a nice partner, another puja to have good education, another puja to get... There's so many different things we can do. This katha, this prayer. There's so many different prayers, so many different pujas, so many different things we can do. And a lot of them are just geared towards having... But what Krishna says is the purpose behind all these Vedic teachings, and right now he's just saying, one just needs to know the purpose. He hasn't got to it. But later on he will say, actually the purpose of all these teachings is to get to know him. Because he's saying that if you get to know me, that's where you're going to find your happiness. That's where you're really going to find your happiness. Isn't it when we first fall in love, it's like everything becomes blinded, everything becomes clouded, and it's just like, this is it. I remember when I first met my wife, and I was in Nairobi, and I met her, and I just met her once, and I came back home to my nanny's place, and my mum was there. I said, Mum, I met her because I was telling her I was being introduced to someone, because someone at the temple was in Nairobi introduced me to her. So I told my mum that day that someone's introducing me to someone. But anyway, I'll be back in 10 minutes. I don't think anything's going to happen. Anyway, I went for a couple of hours. I came back and said, Mum, I really like her. I'm going to marry her. That was it. And I was totally blinded. Everything was just totally blinded by any sense of what to say, intelligence. No thinking, And Krishna is saying that actually when we get to know him, that feeling, that inner feeling of love will always be there. It's not the same as here, because here, after a little while, it's just, oh, okay. It runs out. That chemistry right at the beginning runs out after some time. But Krishna is saying that the love we can have with him on a deeper spiritual level will always be there. Will always be there. But if it comes back to vyavasyatmika buddhi, it means we have to have determination, focus. Focus. It's like a fanatical focus. Now, I'm going to make sure I qualify what I'm saying. We shouldn't be a fanatic, because the definition of a fanatic is someone who is my way or the highway. What I'm doing is right and what everyone else is doing is wrong. That's a fanatic, and that is not what Krishna at all recommends. And later on in the later chapters, he really is quite firm on no one being a fanatic and everyone being inclusive. But being fanatically focused means that one must have that priority. That priority must be there. If spiritual life becomes the priority, then everything else falls into place. Everything else falls into place. The family situation, the work situation, the health situation, it falls into place. It doesn't mean it's always perfect, but it falls into place so that our connection with Krishna remains very strong. So then Krishna says, okay, you need to be determined, but when you are determined, don't expect the results. So in 47 he says, Karmani vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana makarma phala heturbur mate sangosta karmani. He says that it's 4 different things he says in text 47. Karmani vadikaraste, that you have the right to perform your duty. Wow. You have the right to perform your duty. Ma phaleshu kadachana, but don't expect any of the results. Makarma phala heturbu, and if you do get results, don't think that you did it alone. Mate sangosta karmani, and the 4th one he's saying that, and don't be attached to not doing your duty. So this is where Krishna gets, this is a really profound verse, because Krishna here is saying that he's saying, you are doing your duty, karmani vadikaraste, you're doing your duty, you have the right to perform your duty, and you're doing this because it's good for you. And this is amazing, because sometimes we think we are doing our duty for someone else and they should appreciate me. If I have 2 young daughters, and sometimes I think, I'm like breaking my back trying to make these kids happy. It's like you do anything for your children to make them happy. And the thought comes, will they ever really appreciate this? Will they ever, like in 15, 20 years, say, oh, Papa, it was so nice how you took me swimming. It was so nice how you took me to the park. No, they're not going to say anything. But are they meant to? Karmani vadikaraste. No, as a parent, we are doing our duty because it's good for us. We do our duty because it purifies us. It's good for us. So whether the person appreciates you, the person who's involved in your karma, the person who's involved in your duty, whether that person appreciates you or doesn't appreciate you, acknowledges you or doesn't acknowledge you, it's good for you. It's good for you to do the duty. And then he says, and don't expect any results. So the result of appreciation, the result of acknowledgement, don't expect any of that, because you're doing this not to get a result, you're doing this because it's good for you to do it. And then he says that and if the results do come, don't think that you are the only cause of those results. So what do we mean by we're the only cause of those results? I remember when I was doing my accountancy exams in 2004, I was sitting my finals, and I remember I worked so hard. I studied so much, like intensely studied, and I passed. There was 3 exams at the end. I passed 1 and I failed 2. And when you fail 2, you have to retake all 3. And I was just thinking, like, how did that happen? I worked so hard. How did that happen? And then I retook my exams in June 2005, and I did hardly any work. I hardly did anything. I did a little bit, but I could have done a lot more. And then I sat those exams. I did not expect to pass at all. And then I did pass. Because then what happened in between January and April, I think those 4 months in 2005, I went to stay in the temple for some time. My mum and dad were so happy for me. So I went to stay in the temple for some time. And I was thinking, oh wow, maybe I didn't pass my exams because I didn't have to get a job straight away. I could stay at the temple for some time. And then I did those exams. And then when I did those exams, I did not expect to pass. So sometimes you try so hard and the results don't come. Have you seen that? You just try so hard and you don't get the result. Like in a relationship, you may try so hard to please your partner and they're just like never pleased. And you're like, what's wrong? I'm doing everything. And sometimes you're not doing much and they're happy. And you're like, okay, let's just, whatever's, And so sometimes we realize that it's not just about our endeavor. There's something more. It's like these famous cricketers. They're about to go on the pitch to bowl, and they have all these superstitions. Someone's got a red hanky sticking out, someone's got this different chain, and they know they're going to bowl. They've practiced so many hours, but they know there's something else. There's some higher powers involved. And they know that in some sense, if that doesn't go their way, then no matter how much they've practiced, it's not quite going to work out. Footballers have all these different rituals just before getting onto the pitch. Actors who are about to go on stage in the theatre, they have all these different rituals before they go on stage. No matter how much they practice, no matter how much they've done, they know there's something else. So Krishna is saying, there's more. There's more than just you. And then, mate sangosta karmani, and whatever happens, don't be attached to not doing your duty. So don't just one day think, I'm not going to look after my kid if the kid really needs you. Don't just think that actually I renounce this. Because artificial renunciation is what Arjuna was trying to do. Arjuna was trying to renounce his dharma, his duty of fighting on the battlefield. And Krishna was convincing him that your dharma is here. Your adhikar is here. You're not the type to live in the forest. And because you're not the type to live in the forest, you've got to do your duty that is here. So Arjuna did that. He did that. So here Krishna is making it very clear that we've got to do our best. We've got to just do our best and leave Krishna to the rest. It's up. The rest is not in your hands. But what is in our hands is our endeavor. Our endeavor has to be immaculate. That's key. Our endeavor, our efforts have to be immaculate. Then there's nothing, like in 2004, when I did my exams, even though the results came, and I cried actually, I had tears in my eyes, I was crying. I remember getting the results. I was like I said, I was staying at the temple, so the results came in February. I was in the ashram upstairs, the laptop, I was looking at the results. And then I went downstairs to the temple room, I had tears in my eyes thinking, what's going on? Like, how did this happen? But I remember just 1 or 2 days later, maybe just the next day, thinking, I left nothing. I tried everything I could. And because I tried everything I could, I was at peace with what the result was. And sometimes it's like that. Sometimes you can try your best in a certain situation, the result doesn't go our way, but if we've put all our endeavor in, then we can't be attached to the result because the result's not in our hands. The only thing that was in our hands was the endeavor. And that's what we can focus on. When it comes to raising children, passing exams, buying a house, looking after a house, raising a family, anything, all we can be attached to is our endeavor. The rest isn't up to us. Things happen. The world, the material world is not shy to give us different challenges. Isn't it? It's just one day, boom, everything's changed. Okay, now how do I deal with this? And in the next few verses from like 48 to 53, Krishna's talking about yoga. And what he's saying about yoga is that, look, he's basically saying to Arjuna, we're talking about Dharma, but the highest Dharma is yoga uchyate. The highest Dharma is a higher connection. And he's saying to Arjuna, just get involved in this higher connection. Because this higher connection is way beyond Dharma. Yeah, this higher connection is what we actually need so that we can reach a state of purity. Yoga. Yoga means connection. Now I know nowadays yoga, we think of Hatha yoga, which is the popular yoga of exercise, which is it's very harmonious to practicing spiritual life. It can go very much hand in hand to practicing spiritual life. But the word yoga itself means connection, a higher connection. So then Arjuna asked Krishna some questions in text 54. In text 54, Arjuna asked Krishna, so this transcendental person who's highly connected, who's got this higher connection, what are his symptoms? Ke bhasha, what are his symptoms? Kim prabhasheta, how does he talk? What's his language? Kim asita, how does he sit? Kim rajeta, how does he walk? Now when we read this, it can sound like, what is he on about? Why is he asking how someone sits, how someone walks, how someone talks? So sometimes the Bhagavad Gita is spoke very poetically, and in that poetry, in the way it's spoken, there's a meaning behind it. So when Arjuna's asking, Ke bhasha, what are his symptoms? When Arjuna's asking, Kim prabhasheta, how does this pure soul speak? What's his language? What he's basically asking is, how does this pure soul, how does this advanced person respond to difficult situations, respond to the situations of this world? Kim asita. He then says, how does he sit? It's not literally how does he sit, it's how does he withdraw from the sense objects? How does he withdraw from the sense? This material world is full of temptation. Krishna is saying, Vyavasayatmika buddhi, that you have to have one pointed focus, one pointed resolute determination. But then there's so much temptation to just go here, there and everywhere. So Arjun's asking, how does he withdraw from that? And Kim Rajeta, he says how does he talk, but it means how does he engage with the sense objects? How does he actually engage with the sense objects? So in text 55, Krishna responds to the first question, Ke bhasha, what are his symptoms? And he says to Arjuna that basically this person, Atmanyevatmana tushte, this person is satisfied in the self. That's a key symptom, being satisfied in the self. Stita pragya tadochite. And he is situated in a higher transcendental consciousness. So these are two major things, major symptoms that I think all of us in this room would desperately want. Imagine being Atmanyevatmana tushte, just satisfied within the self. Like internally satisfied. If one is internally satisfied, then everything external doesn't matter. It's okay, because internally I'm okay. If internally I'm okay, the external cannot affect me. Stita pragyate rochite, but this will be done in a high, and this can only be done because this person is situated in a higher state of consciousness. So he answered the first question. What are the symptoms? The symptoms are he's satisfied in himself and He's in a higher state of consciousness. Okay, the next question Arjun asked is Kim Prabhasheta. Kim Prabhasheta means how does he talk? How does he respond? And Krishna answers this in 55, 56. He says, Dukeshvanudigna mana sukeshu vigataspriyaha vitaraga bhaya kroda stitadir munir uchate. He's saying that this person is Dukeshvanudigna mana. He's not affected by the miseries of this world. Sukeshu, Dukeshvanudigna mana sukeshu vigataspiya. And all the happiness that the world can offer him will not elate him. Vita raga bhaya kroda. He is free from raga, attachments. He is free from bhaya, fear. And he is free from kroda, anger. And because this person is free from attachment, attachment means I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. Free from fear. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? What if that happens? Does our mind do that all the time? That's fear. Imagine being free from fear. Wow, what a profound way of living. The Bhagavad Gita gives us a profound way of living. And Krodha, imagine being free from anger. Free from anger means that anger never consumes us. Sthitta dir munir uchate. This is a sage of steady mind. This is a person of steady mind. So, this is how Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that someone responds to, this is how the advanced soul responds to the daily challenges of life. Not getting so down when misery comes and not getting elated. What does it mean to not get elated when there's happiness? When we get too elated when there's happiness, whatever comes up must come down. Right? So if you get too excited by the happiness, it's like I remember I went to the Champions League final some years ago and Liverpool won and I was so excited, I was so happy, yeah, Liverpool won the Champions League final, I'm here, hey, amazing. And then what happened? You come back home and there's this feeling of ooh. And there's this really down feeling inside. Why? Because when you go up, you must come down. When you go up, you must come down in this world. That's what it's like. So we don't get too elated. I remember one quote by Alex Ferguson, because his team used to win the Premier League every year. And he used to say the hardest thing is after winning, because the players would get down. So he would motivate them to just play another season, to get that winning feeling again. But then as soon as they win, what happened? They'd come back down. And we've probably noticed this. We think, oh, when I pass this exam, I will be happy forever. We're happy, we get overexcited and life takes us back. When I get this house, I'll be happy forever. We move in and after a few months, it's just the place where we live. When I get this car, I'll feel like I'm in an aeroplane. After some time, the kids trash the car and it's just a normal car. So what happens in this material world is that if we get too elated by the good things that come, then what happens is we come back down. So what he's trying to say is don't get overexcited by the material happiness. Let it come. Let it come. Be pleased with it, but don't get too elated by it. So then Krishna answers this question in that way. And then the next question, Kim Asita, how does he withdraw how does he withdraw from temptation? And Krishna says that actually he does this by just like a tortoise. Just like a tortoise. Yada samarate chaham krumongani vasarvashaha indriyani indriyatebhyas tasya pragya pratishtita. And he says, just like a tortoise withdraws its limbs into a shell, the saintly person can withdraw himself from the sense objects. Whoa, I think this is text 58. And 57, 58. 58? Yeah, text 58. And then it's like, okay, but how does he do that? Like, how is it possible to withdraw from sense objects just like limbs go into the shell of a tortoise? So Krishna says in 59, that Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasovarjam rasopyasya param dvishtva nivartate. That yes, Even though someone is practicing spiritual life, the attachment for sense objects will still remain. It will still remain. The taste for raso ardam, raso pyasya, the taste for these things is still there. But one must try and param drishtva nivartate, one must try and get the higher taste. When one gets a higher taste, one is able to give up the lower tastes. When we have something higher, you don't need something lower. Isn't it? When you have something higher, you don't need something lower. So, it's just for example, let's say there's a football match, the world's best player, let's say Messi, he's on the bench. He's on the bench, he's fit, he's willing to go, he's on the bench. And then there's a player who's playing up front at the moment in the team and he's not playing so well. But you can get Messi on the pitch. So when you get Messi on the pitch, you're not going to miss this other player who's not doing much. Because you've got the best player in the world who's about to come on the pitch and he's going to do wonderful things and he's probably going to win you the match. And similarly, in every sphere of life, when you have something higher, you're able to give up the lower. If you get a promotion at work, you don't want both jobs, you just want the higher job. Right? When you get a higher position, you don't need the lower position because you got the higher position. And Krishna is saying when you get the higher taste, you don't need the lower taste. You don't need the things that you still have to taste for, because the senses are still very much conditioned to the sense objects. Param drishtva nivartate. So the higher taste is possible. And Krishna speaks about this more in the 9th chapter. That he says in the 9th chapter that susukam kartam avyaham. He says in 9.2 later on that actually devotional service is very joyfully performed. It's actually very, very happily performed. Param drishtva nivartate, because we can achieve a higher taste. A higher taste. Like a higher taste. It's like my friends. I remember when I started to get into practicing spiritual life, my friends started to say to me, Kunal, like, how did you suddenly stop drinking? How did you suddenly stop smoking? How did it happen like this? And it wasn't like, did you go on and one of them said, did you go to AA? I'm like, no, I didn't go to AA. Did you take the nicotine patches? No, I didn't take any nicotine patches. How is it? Because actually, when we get something higher, we don't feel like distracting ourselves with something else. That's how it works. And it's even like an athlete who really wants to score goals or hit sixes or take many wickets or do anything, swim 100 meters breaststroke really fast. They need to give up certain things so that they can achieve what they're trying to achieve. So Krishna, he makes himself available. He makes himself available through the chanting, through these type of discussions. He makes himself very available. And we notice that when we're tuned in, the heart starts to feel more peaceful. The heart starts to feel a level of upliftment. And when we feel that level of upliftment, at that moment we think, okay, I can do this. But then what happens is we get in the car, we switch on the radio, we start driving, we realize all the things happening in the world, and we need a distraction. We need a distraction because the world is giving us too much. And Krishna Krishna says this, he warns Arjuna in text 60, he says, Yattato hi api konteya purushaya vipaschitaha indriyani pramatini haranti prashabam manaha. In 2.60 he says that even a person of steady discrimination, this is a person who knows right from wrong, who knows the higher self and the lower self. The person who knows he needs to get a higher taste and give up the lower taste. Indriyani pramatini haranti prashabam manaha. The senses are still so strongly taken away. They can still be taken away, even to a man or a woman of discrimination. Someone who's got this intelligence can still be swept away. So then Krishna, for the first time, in this conversation in 2.61 starts, for the first time, he does something. He says, Tani sarvani samyami yukta asita matparaha vashehiya shindriyani tasya pragya pratishtita. For the first time in this conversation, Krishna says, yukta asita matparaha. The way you can get this asita, the way you can really get this sense control, the way you can really withdraw from the sense object is yukta, is have a connection, mat paraha, with me. And that's the first time he said to Arjuna, I'm the man. It's the first time he said to Arjuna, I'm the person that when we've been talking about the Supreme, we've been talking about a higher taste, we've been talking about higher spiritual realms. For the first time in the conversation in 2.61, Krishna is saying, Mat Paraha, it's about me. You're trying to control your senses. We're talking about control from sense objects. And Krishna is saying in 2.61, I am the object of sense control. I am the person that you can connect with. I am the person that you can develop the relationship with. But he doesn't get too deeply into it yet. He's now just starting to hint. From chapter 7 onwards, Krishna doesn't hold back. He really gets into it. He starts really kind of showing off about it in a very nice way. But he's allowed because it's the truth. He's just hinting at it. Mat paraha. Connect with me. Develop this connection with me. This will make you eternally happy. Wow. So Krishna said this. And then he says to Arjuna in 2.62, what will happen if you don't connect with me? What will happen? Dhyayaton vishayan pumsha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodo vijayate. He says that just because of, if you contemplate the object of the senses, dhyayato, by the contemplation, what will then happen? Sangasteshu pajayate, you become attached. You become attached. And when you are attached, Sangasteshu pajayate, when you are attached to something, what will happen next? You want it. And when you want something, you try and control. Sangat sanjayate kama, you want control, and that control is, another word for kama is control or lust. This is lust. Lust is when we want to control. We want to become the lord of the world. We want to become the lord of our surroundings. We want to be the boss. And then when you're trying to control, and we realize that we can't control, what then happens? Kamat kodo bijayate, we become angry. So he's saying, so it starts with just wanting something. From wanting something, you become attached to what you want. From becoming attached to what you want, you try and control the situation to get what you want. And then when you can't get what you want, or when you've got what you want but it's not enough, we become angry. And then he says in the next verse, in 63, Krodha bhavati samhoha smiti vibhramaha smiti bramshad buddhi nashat pranashati. He says in the next verse that from this anger we become deluded. Anyone felt angry before and then suddenly become a bit deluded with what's the right thing to do? It happens. And from this delusion, what happens? We lose smriti vibhramaha, we lose our memory. Memory means we forget what's right and wrong. We forget who's around us. We get really angry. We forget who's around us. People who are watching you in this, having this little tantrum. We forget all of that because we become totally deluded. We lose your memory, and then he says, "Smriti bramshad buddhi nasho." And from losing that memory, all your intelligence is gone. Intelligence means discriminating what's right and wrong. And then he says, what happens from that? Buddhi nashat pranashyati. And from that, everything falls down. So Krishna is explaining in these two verses in 62 and 63, it starts with dhyayato, it starts with contemplation. That contemplation, just contemplating. And this contemplation, if we haven't got the higher taste that he spoke about in text 59, mat paraha, if we haven't tried to connect to him, which he talks about in 61, then just by the contemplation of the senses, we'll go from contemplation to attachment, from attachment to lust and control, to anger, from anger to bewilderment, delusion, losing the memory, losing intelligence, and then becoming totally lost. Buddhi nashat pranashati, totally lost, and we fall away. So that's his answer to the third question, which was Kim Asita. How does he withdraw from the sense objects? Just 5 minutes, is that okay?
Last
5 minutes, yeah. And then the last question that he asks, Arjun asked in 54 was Kim Rajeta, which is, how does he respond? How does he respond to the sense object? How does he respond? How does he live his daily life? He has to do the yukta mat paraha. He has to connect with him to withdraw from sense objects. He needs to get the higher taste. But what does he do? And Krishna says in text 64, Raga Dvesha Vimuktestu Vishayan Indriyescharan Atman Vishay Videy Atma Prashadam Adigachati. He says in text 64 that the person must be Raga Dvesha. He must be free from attachment and he must be free from aversion. Attachment and aversion are two sides of the same coin. It's like someone who, let's think of an example. Raga Dvesha. Okay, someone who says, I love eating meat. And someone else who says, I hate people who eat meat. The person who's attached to it, raga, and the person who's averse to it, dvesha, vimuktestu, is the two sides of the same coin. Because the person who's attached to it and the person who's averse to it, they're both attached to it. Because you can only hate something or be averse to something if you actually have an attachment to it. So Krishna is saying, be free from attachment and aversion. Don't have the hatred in your heart. Because if we have the hatred in our heart, how will we be able to love others? If we notice that someone else is doing something we don't quite like, if someone else lives their life in a way that we don't like, then what? Are we just going to be averse to them? And if we're averse to them, that means we actually have an attachment, a subtle attachment to what they actually are doing. But how will we love them? How will we love them? And love comes from a higher place. So Krishna then says, Atman Vishay Videy Atma Prashadam Adigachati. By then, in text 64, he's saying that by following the regulative principles of freedom, one can get the full prashadam, the mercy of the Lord. How does he get the full mercy of the Lord? He gets the full mercy of the Lord. It's by regulative principles. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the next text, which we'll do after the Bhagavad Gita, which will take us to the end of our life. It's 18,000 verses, we'll have lots of fun. But what gets spoken about in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the 4 legs of religion. The 4 legs of religion are compassion, merciful, being compassionate, being merciful, being austere, and being clean, having cleanliness. And these regulative principles of freedom, which Krishna hints at here, he says they are principles of freedom. When we have lots and lots of cars on the road, and then we have cars on the road and we have traffic lights. What is the purpose of traffic lights? Anyone? What's the purpose of the traffic light system? The red, the yellow, the green, one direction, the other direction. What's the reason we have the traffic lights? To control the traffic. Okay. And when we control traffic, does that mean cars are more free or cars are going to be more of a jam? Does traffic lights help the road system or not help the road system? It helps the road system because then when it's green, all those cars can be free. Correct? And when it's red, certain cars stop. And then when they get the green light, they'll go and the other ones will stop. So it's actually this regulation actually gives us freedom. So Krishna mentions these principles, the regulative principles of freedom. And these regulative principles are the 4 legs of religion. So compassionate means avoid meat eating. Austerity means avoid intoxication. Cleanliness means avoid illicit sex life. And what was the other one? Compassionate? Truthfulness, sorry, merciful, yeah, compassionate, so mercifulness and compassionate is the same. I forgot to say this last one. Truthfulness means try and abstain from gambling. And by abstaining from these 4 activities, we are upholding the 4 legs of religion. And when we uphold the 4 legs of religion, what actually happens is we're regulating ourselves, but that gives us inner freedom. That's the real freedom of the soul. So many people say to me, but Kunal, you gave all this up. You must live such a boring life. And I'm like, no, I'm actually okay. I'm actually quite good, thank you. How are you? So these principles are designed for the freedom of the soul. The freedom of the soul. And when we take these steps, the people around us may not be so up for it. But when we take these steps, inside we feel the reciprocation from the Lord, and that reciprocation is so strong that it helps us to keep fixed on the goal. Keeps us focused. And I'm going to finish. So then Krishna then says to Arjuna, and I'll finish at 66, and then I'll just mention the last few verses. And in 66, because we're getting a bit late, in 66, Krishna says that if one wants happiness, nashtir buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nachabhavaya tashantir ashantasya kutashukam, that if our intelligence and our mind is situated in the Supreme, if it's situated in a higher consciousness, in Krishna consciousness, then what will happen? He says, if this will give us ashantasya kutashukam, it will give us peace. And then Krishna says, and without peace, ashantasya kutashukam, how can there be happiness? So Krishna is saying to Arjuna, the reason you want to leave this battlefield is because you want to be happy. And the reason sometimes we want to give up our duty is because we think that will make us happier. Isn't it? Sometimes we just think, to hell with this job, or to hell with this person, I need to get out of here, this is what will make me happy. But Krishna is saying we're not going to be happy unless we find inner peace. And the only way to find inner peace is by connecting our mind and intelligence to the higher consciousness. And then Krishna goes on for the rest of this chapter, ending with a similar sort of message, that the person must be free from ego. The person must be free from material desires. And with this freedom, that in text 72 he ends with this freedom, one can attain the kingdom of God. And that kingdom of God is said to be Vaikunta. Vaikunta means the place without suffering, the place where there's no misery, the place where every step is a dance, every word is a song. Who wouldn't want to go there? Who wouldn't want to go to a place which is full of happiness, full of excitement, where every word is a song, every step is a dance, everyone loves each other, everyone's connected to each other, and there's no quarreling that leads us to so much misunderstanding. So this is the second half of chapter 2. Sorry I went on and on and on. I get too excited, especially with chapter 2 because it's such a long chapter. I promise to be shorter in the following chapters that we go through. But if anyone has any comments or questions, please do feel free to share them. It would be very nice to hear your thoughts and reflections on this chapter also. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Kunal, I'll start off with one question.
Yeah,
so
sure.
You were saying that if you do something, don't be attached to the results.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you're giving this story of Alex Ferguson, then we're seeing the Bhagavad Gita, and I think there's a contradiction here, because if you look at the reality, if you've got a child, you've got people working with you, if you don't encourage them, you don't give them positive feedback, then they lose their motivation. So you're talking about Mr. Alex Ferguson, the team goes in the down and he brings them back up. we're talking about the Bhagavad Gita, and one of the verses earlier on you said that Krishna gave the argument that actually you fight, you win, you'll be like this, you lose, you'll be like this. So what I'm really asking you here is, isn't there a contradiction here? Because actually you need positive motivation in your life.
Yeah.
If you just say to yourself, yeah, fine, I've just been kicked and I've been this, and I'll be all right, I'm not attached to the result. You may have a broken jaw, but how do you marry all this together?
Yeah, that's a good point. So when Krishna was talking about the win-win and the lose-lose, in that section of the Gita, in that section of the conversation, he was responding to Arjuna's argument. If I lose the battle, I'm dead, and if I win the battle, I've got no one to enjoy it with. And Krishna was just responding to that argument, but that argument is still karma kanda, which means it's still on the material platform. When later on Krishna is talking about endeavor, karmanyavadikaraste, what he's saying is that and you gave the example very nicely, Divyesh, that when we're encouraging our child. So this is a very nice example. When we encourage our children, we're encouraging them to be the best that they can be. We're trying to find what is their strengths. What is the strengths in my child? And when we find out what the strengths are in my child, we try to fan those strengths. We try to bring out those strengths. We try to bring out the potential and the capacity so that our child is the best that the person could possibly be. And that's the role of the parent, to try and help the child be the best that they can be in the person that they are. Now, if on that road the child is trying hard, but the child doesn't get the results that they want, it's not the results that matter. What matters most is the endeavor. Because in that endeavor, there is the feeling, there is that sense of righteousness. The result will follow, but the key thing is the endeavor. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah. So the result is there, but the result may come, the result may not come. But the person, the child or the adult, will always be happy doing what they were born to do. Because we all have a particular nature. We all have a particular dharma. We have a particular nature. There's things that we're really good at. We may not have even admitted them to ourselves. There's two things we can look at in life. It's like how to live our life happily 101 in two points. One, what am I really, really good at? And two, what do I really, really like doing? So what am I really good at? Think of it like a Venn diagram. What am I really good at? And another circle, what do I really like doing? And whatever you find in that middle bit, that is what we should really be trying to do with our life. And if we find those things for our children, what does my child really like doing? What is my child really good at? And we try and find the things that they're really good at and they like doing, whatever that is, they'll excel in it. And then whether the result comes or doesn't come, they'll be really happy. They'll be really happy. I could say, for example, I like to teach. Now, so I'm giving this class. Now the result could be that some of you come to me afterwards and say, "Oh, that was such a nice class. Thank you." And this can happen. It does happen, and I'm very grateful when that does happen. But if it doesn't happen, and I have given classes when that hasn't happened, I'm still feeling happy because I'm doing what I like to do. I'm just doing what I like to do. I feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do. So when that happens, or when the result comes in a certain way or comes in a different way, yesterday I gave a class at the temple and one devotee came to me and said it was a nice class and he gave me some feedback on how I could improve, and it was a really important bit of feedback that he gave me. So the result may be what we think, it may not be what we think, but if we're doing what we like doing and what we're good at doing, whatever the result is, we're still going to be motivated to keep going because it's within ourselves. It's the nature within us. And that's what Krishna is saying to Arjuna. You are born to be a warrior. You are born to protect the citizens. Do your dharma. Whether you win or whether you lose, you're going to be happy because you're doing your dharma. I hope that made some sense. Does anyone else like to share any points or thoughts, questions? Yes, please.
Can I just give you this? Because they can't get the...
When you talked about those who are too attached to the sense of enjoyment and material opulence. I don't know if you've heard about this young girl in the last 3 months was taken up from the slums, and she's now representing a brand in India. A beautiful young lady. I think she must be 12, 13. I mean, how can you deny that kind of opulence, abundance that she's suddenly received coming up from
Amazing.
the slums? And I mean, this morning I just saw an article on her on Facebook, and I told my mom about it. She says, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's a life-changing experience. How do you sort of try and find how can you deny this sort of happiness?
No, we shouldn't deny it.
Yeah?
That's what we said was, it's a really good point when we get this opulence, how to deny, how could we deny the opulence? But we shouldn't deny the opulence, and I think I tried to kind of follow on from that, which is, if the opulence comes, use it for a higher purpose. So the opulence can come. And if the opulence comes, we don't reject it. It's like if the son gets inheritance from the father, he's not going to say, no, I don't want it. You know?
She's going to be attached to it because she's never seen it.
But that's the thing. When we get it, we shouldn't become too... And that's what Krishna is saying. Don't become too attached and bewildered. Because because the next part of that verse is, Vyavasayatmika buddhi samadau na vidyate. If we become too attached, that we become bewildered by the opulence, then the resolute determination for spiritual life won't come. So, opulence can come, but that shouldn't stop us wavering from our spiritual determination. And that's what we meant. But if the opulence comes, that doesn't mean Arjuna and the Pandavas, after the end of Kurukshetra, they took over the kingdom and they ruled for many, many years. They had the opulence, but they used it always in service to the Lord. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Hare Krishna. Anyone else like to share anything? Any thoughts, discussion, question, points? Yes?
Yes, so one of the things was, Krishna said, how does Arjun avoid distractions? So it's being satisfied in oneself, then external distraction doesn't matter. But you need to be in a higher state of consciousness. But that's quite difficult. So what kind of examples would you give for us, say, to try to be
in a higher state of consciousness?
To avoid distraction, because that's a big issue on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is why, and I think we mentioned it last time as well, that in this age, in Kali Yuga, it's just so hard to be spiritual. It's just so difficult to practice spiritual life because the distractions are immense. It's immense. It's an onslaught. And even when one is practicing spiritual life, and the next distraction comes, and one must just keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. So Krishna, he's made himself very available. Koli Kale, Nam Rupe, Krishna Avatar. In this age of Kali, Koli Kale, Nam Rupe, in the form of his name, Krishna Avatar, he has appeared. So Krishna, he has appeared in the form of his holy name. So I can give my personal example. When I first started going to the temple in 2001, the first thing I remember saying to someone, I want to do something. I don't know what it is, but I want to do something every day. I want to do some sort of daily practice. So this person gave me some beads. And they just said, chant this mantra every day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And I started chanting one round of that. It's 108 beads every day. So when we chant the name of Krishna, Krishna purifies us from within the heart. And when Krishna purifies us from within the heart, Param Drishtva Nivartate, we start to get the higher taste. Now I remember for about 2 years, I chanted at least one round a day. I didn't give up any of my other habits. There was many. And I just carried on, I carried on chanting one round a day. And then 2.5 years later, that's when I started to read. I didn't even read. I was just chanting. Every time I read something, I just felt like, nah, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. Every time I tried to pick up a book, I was just like, whoa, I'm not ready. But then when I did read, I started to read things that were actually happening to me. Like I remember reading that we won't let others affect us. And I remember feeling for those 2 years that even though people still affected me, they affected me less. And this is all part of chanting the holy name, because what happens is it goes straight into the heart, and what happens is it cleans the dirt in the heart. And then what happens for the first few years, many years from in my case, the dirt starts to show up. So all the, you know, when you clean your room, when you start cleaning your room, what happens first is all the dirt comes out. So this process of cleansing brings out a lot of dirt. But as you keep cleaning and you keep cleaning, we become more purified. So Krishna's made himself very accessible through chanting the holy name. It sounds like a chore. Like it takes maybe 8 to 9 minutes, maybe 7 to 8 minutes to chant one whole round of the Hare Krishna mantra. And at some points, it feels like it's taking too long to finish the round. Sometimes we think I'm not even concentrating on the name and I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking of that. But if we just keep going and keep chanting and we keep chanting, what happens is, just like someone who's got jaundice, when someone's got jaundice, the cure is to have sugar candy. And what happens when the person takes sugar candy, it still feels very bitter. On day 1, day 2, day 3, it starts to feel, it's still very bitter. But as they keep tasting the sugar candy, slowly, it becomes sweet. The illness goes away and the sweetness comes out. So similarly with chanting Hare Krishna, at the beginning it can feel like a chore. It can feel bitter because we think I've got so much more to do. I've got to get my kids to school. I've got to get to work. I've got to deal with this. I've got to deal with that. I've got so much to deal with. So many things. But I've noticed personally, when I wake up early to chant, my Krishna manages my time for me. Suddenly things just fall into place and my time is managed, and whatever's meant to happen in the day, there's some higher presence involved and things just work out. Krishna says in the Gita later on that the yagya in this age is japosmi, that chanting is the biggest sacrifice we can do. So the long answer to your question is a very simple point, that if we chant Hare Krishna every day, we'll start to feel Krishna's presence in our life, and that will give us the higher taste, that will give us that connection, and that is the basis for everything else. It's the basis to giving up lower desires, lower tastes. It's the basis to finding spiritual happiness. It all comes from chanting. So give it a go. And if you're already doing, give it more of a go. It works. Hare Krishna. Anyone else want to share anything before we finish up?
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for your patience. Just a couple of small announcements. Initially, an apology. I think there was some sort of technical error with the WhatsApp group, and the previous messages were getting deleted. I think we've got that now. Only the administrators can change those getting deleted. The last session that we had got deleted, so we're going to put that on for the next one. The next meeting is on the 28th of June. And in the context of that, just a small announcement from the LCNL. Clearly, we're grateful for their support with everything today. They've also got a function on the 28th, which they've asked us to announce, which is Whisk Drive, which is a card session. So in line with your session, it should be quite nice. So you're going to have a choice on that, I'm afraid. But so you decide. And in the context of that, there's quite a nice story, because I was listening to you, and I'm not sure if people heard of Janaka Pandit. So he was a minister who effectively was at the time Valitama Great, who was called the Kingmaker. So he was very well known for being very eloquent in his religious languages, and he said the best way you live your life is in 3 parts. You have 3 things you do in the morning, or you have 3 things you do. So you go, the first part is women, the second part is gambling, and the third part is thinking of thieves. He goes, you wake up in the morning, you think of the women, you spend your afternoon thinking of gambling, and you spend your evening thinking of thieves. So in the context of this, he's quite and Chanakya Pandit is known for saying all the religious things, so they're asking for an explanation. So So the thing with the women in the morning, we listen to the Ramayana. There's a story of all the women, Sita, Kaikeya and everyone else. Then in the afternoon it's Gandhika and Mahabharata. And the evening is the plea for Krishna. So if you have those three things in your lives, we can remember all the three things you're not meant to do, you're meant to be doing, you just put it that way around. So you can decide which one to do. So on the 28th, you have a choice. And thank you for everyone for the food. We'll end it there. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, it was a bit.
No, it's fine.
Quite a long chapter.
Yeah, it's a very long chapter. Thank you. No, it's great.